All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you had a wonderful week thus far. And shout out to the government for giving us Wednesday off. And if you didn't get it off, hopefully you got it off in some way. You went home and tried to relax. Thank you for showing up. It really means a lot to us here at Cyversity. And I just want to say, yeah, thank you. Today we have Hakeem and Elizabeth. Thank you for blessing us with your presence and taking the time out to talk with me, all of us. So first, I just want to get into introductions. I want to start off with Elizabeth. I read your bio. You have a really long bio. It's very inspiring. Um, you were the first of many things, and you have an intersection between cybersecurity and the military and project management and leading. So, can you take us into a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Stevens. I retired out of the United States Marine Corps in 2015. That's telling you a little bit about how old I am. I'm a Tennessee native, born in Memphis, Tennessee, currently living in Nashville, Tennessee. I did go to the Naval Academy and then became a serial master's degree type. Um, I flew helicopters and tilt rotors and did a little combat engineering and a little bit of aviation safety and a little bit of, well, basically, if it was fun at the time and it didn't bore me, I was doing it for the military. But in that whole journey, it was about finding the thing that gave me light and passion and the thing that kept me challenged while doing the right thing for the right reasons. I left the military in 2015 and joined up with a small company called Semper US Gas and Power out of San Diego, which was awesome, where I learned everything there was to know about routers and switches while I was making up for the team who was out on the beach surfing. I never went surfing with them. I just made sure I was home until they came into the office, and gained a passion for like networking and actual knowledge of what that meant. And then very soon after I started there, I landed at Microsoft and then spent the next 8 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. The benefit was having come out of the Marine Corps, and as many of you know, in the spirit of Juneteenth, potentially being the only one or the first one and the only one in many different realms. Whether I was the first Black person, the first Black woman, the first woman, or the first Black woman, there was a whole lot of that kind of thing going on. But the biggest part for me, after going through like doing a transition from the military, I deployed a bunch of times, maybe too many times, did some scary and terrifying, but also exhilarating things that I'm proud of and some that I'm not. Get into Microsoft, like to say the same thing, did some very exciting and sometimes terrifying things, but mostly things that were terrifying because once I came out the military and I had the good experience at Semper US Gas and Power, navigating and transitioning at Microsoft seemed like, from a career perspective, fairly easy. From a cultural perspective, I grew up in the South. I joined the military. It was the Marine Corps, not the Air Force. And so landing in a place where people had been working on computers and coding in their sleep, and then having gone from being just a simply lowly project manager to a principal product developer / principal software engineer. And my bachelor's degree was in English literature to be specific. So the one thing that I learned was that no matter what you do, no matter where you are, people can't tell you what's going to be possible for you. You're the only one that can do that. And once you figure out where that power is, it's going to be hard. And there are going to be times where you're like, I wish there were more people that look like me, spoke like me, or at least somebody that understands me. But as long as you keep moving and keep stepping forward, one foot, left foot, right foot, as we say in my circles, left foot, right foot, that's a win. And so I ended my career at Microsoft as the director, the only global leader, director of cyber defense, risk intelligence. And that meant that I was responsible for the cyber defense and offense, technically, for all of the Microsoft data centers worldwide, that to include the lessers. And that from a child that grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and didn't actually know. Now, Orange Mound is a great place. A lot of people don't know a lot about Memphis, but where I grew up, There was a large, booming, bustling community. Black culture, first of firsts, second only to Harlem during that period of time, but also significantly attacked and degraded by that period of time after that awakening. And so being able to see that there's a place, not just a place for me, but that I can make some places uh, and then change the script meant that the next step for me wasn't staying at Microsoft and doing what they do. It was taking the step and doing it for us, by us, because right now, the most exciting thing to me is that we're in that point that there's a technological inflection, a cultural inflection. And yes, I'm nerding out because, I'll say it, I'm not neurotypical, but right now we have a moment in space and time where everything that we do, everyone is new. Not a single person can tell you that they've been doing this for X number of years because there has never been cyber, AI, culture, politics, studies, the number of things. So I'm here to tell you I started my own business because of that transition and that spark, because I don't want us to have another Juneteenth event where we're sitting back going, oh, and then we all found out that we had access to robots that could cure cancer, right? That's why I'm here. And that's a long way of saying there's a lot in there. And I know you want me to say more, but I'm just going to let you have to ask the questions.
Awesome. That was amazing. You've done so much. My jaw is still dropped. Hakeem, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Uh, First of all, Elizabeth Stevens, thank you for your service and thank you for your awesomeness. I'm still trying to digest it all. Like, wow, really wow. So, yeah, just amazing. This is going to be so many pearls and nuggets. But let me answer Babette's question and pull myself together because I'm just like,
no, because I'm hoping we can
like
not pull me together.
It's okay. I'm on the Bay Area chapter of Cyversity. During the day, I work as a senior product manager at Salesforce in threat detection or detection and response. I've been in the cyber game probably almost 10 years now. Been doing IT in financial services for about 15 years before that. Um, Originally from Buffalo, New York, grew up in Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Got a couple of degrees, a bit overeducated, got some SAN certifications. Um, I'm really passionate about building and developing programs to bring people from diverse backgrounds and economically disadvantaged backgrounds into professional technical fields, especially cyber. But as you said, we're at that inflection point where it's like cyber, AI, or whatever it is you want to do, leveraging technology just to get you out of your disadvantage or economically disadvantaged, or just to get you wherever you need to go. So that's my passion. And then I'm happy to be here to talk about Juneteenth. Thanks, Babette.
Awesome. So now we got that out of the way. We're about to get into the nitty gritty. It's Juneteenth. All of us have the same skin color, and I'm about to get into it. So, Elizabeth, you've been the first in many, many things. I was also a first, but not as many firsts as you. I graduated as the only African American female in 2019 to graduate from my cybersecurity program, and that was like 150. And often, like you, I was the only female or the only African American woman. And I know for me, during those times, I had breakdowns. I wanted to cry. Nobody looked like me. Everybody had been coding since they came out of their mother's womb. So I just wanted to get your perspective of what kept you going and what advice do you have to those people who are in that position? Because, just being black, you're a trailblazer. That's an automatic, no matter what you do. So, but I know there's some people out there who are having a hard time where they just don't want to be alone. They don't want to feel alone. So this is why we have to continuously have people on like you and have people on like Hakeem who can tell their story about that. Here, this is the trail that I made. It was bumpy roads, but I'm here. But I'm here to smooth it out a little bit for the next person. So just tell me a little bit more about that part.
I bet you're not gonna make it easy. I love this. It's a good question. So, Hakeem, you're gonna be up next. No, so first though, like Babette, like it's 2019. I'm so sorry. That shouldn't have been the way, but I understand. For me, this was a couple decades ago. I'm not gonna say how many, but you can figure it out. A couple decades ago, for me to be the first of this, like the first started as soon as I left high school, and I was like, "What do you mean I'm the first?" And then when, for me, the hardest part was once you started to shine, like you go somewhere, they're like, we're on mission, we're doing the thing. And I was surrounded by some very good people, but also some not good people. And I mean, like really not good people. And the thing that kept me moving, like for the early years, the Marine Corps years, the hard years, I say the hard years, but tech was much harder, was like this need to like be a part of what we are, right? Like I struggled with being a trailblazer because I was like, I think I'm a pathfinder because you keep saying that nobody's done it before or it's impossible. And whether it's like my stubbornness, which could be diagnosed now, but like, or my just darned like objective defiance to being told what to do, it was about keeping going and being proud of who I was, right? Like there were times when like it got so bad I hadn't looked in the mirror and seen myself, like hadn't actually seen myself in the mirror for like weeks. And I'd walked past a mirror just leaving my room and was like, oh my, that's who I am right now, right? Because it's hard and it's not easy and it's trying. And we're the type of people in our diaspora, our entire culture is about the culture itself and giving back and being a part of that. And the culture that is not similar, the things that we're talking about now, like unethical people, the things that people do to each other that are not in our best interest as humanity in itself, those things are all meant to isolate us. And so then you add that, and like I can end with the military years. The one thing that was great about the Marine Corps is we didn't care who you were, what you looked like, or where you came from. If you were the one to get the job done, you were the one to get the job done. And so that's what we did. And what that instilled in me, minus all the bruises and like the helicopter landings, the gunfire and all that jazz, the war, what that instilled in me was, hey, there's one thing that I got that nobody else has right now, and that's ability to control what I'm doing, right? I can control what I'm doing and how you are making me feel, right? And so that got me through the Marine Corps because no matter what, I knew exactly what we were supposed to be doing. I knew what my goals were, and I knew that I wanted to make my family and my community proud. Now, did I know that I was the first and only? Most of the time I found out when I was taxiing back from a flight and someone was taking pictures. I can't make this up. I found out I was the first woman to fly the V-22 coming back from a night flight, and somebody was taking pictures on the flight line. And I'm like cussing up a storm, like, why are they taking pictures? I got goggles on. This is a hazard, because aviation safety. And my co-pilot, who's a senior to me, was instructing me on that flight. He's like, you don't even know. He's a Hispanic guy. I love him. His name was Captain Martinez. He's like, you don't even know? I'm like, know what? And he's like, you're the first woman to fly the Osprey. And I was like, oh. Right? So sometimes that's a good thing, right? But then fast forward to tech, and I'm walking into the room, and I'm going, like the early years especially, I'm walking in the room, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just sit somewhere here at like quite literally the table example, right? I'm the lead. I'm the person that's supposed to be doing the kickoff. And I come in and someone moves my stuff and sits in my chair. And I'm like, well, there's two things that I could do here, fresh out of the military, right? There's two things I can do here. And for the record, there's always more than two, right? I'm like, well, somebody might get the knife hand, which is a Marine Corps term, right? Or I can sit back and see how this unfolds because I don't know what this culture's like. I know what they would do in the Marine Corps because they did it, but I don't know what this culture's like. And at the point where I sat back and sat on the windowsill and they were like, okay, who's going to start the meeting? And they're like, there's your expert over there. And the whole room turned around. I was like, this is going to be one of those kind of engagements. But that's the key though, right? The reason we get upset, the reason we feel that weight on us is because we are a community of people physically being a community, right? No matter how bad it gets, there's always like a feel, like that whole thing that we do when we walk past somebody and see them, like, oh yeah, that's it. What's up? Like that. Even like my arch nemesis, I'm like, still, hey girl, what's up? You know what I'm saying? And so Microsoft was different because, yeah, I was the only one, and you would understand this. I was the only one in so many different ways, right? Like, who is this military lady come? Because they don't like military people, right? So I hid that. I was covering for being a Marine. Then I was covering for being a tech. And then I was covering for being the one in charge. And at some point I was like, I'm tired of all this covering. Can you guys imagine how much work I could get done if I could just do the work instead of having to pay attention? And at that point, right, when I realized that there are people out there, like, it's a huge company, Microsoft. There are Black people and brown people and yellow people and people just like you there, but we were so isolated. And so even when it was hard, the thing that you have to do is find your tribe. And they don't have to be in the organization either. I'll tell you that, because there'll be a lot of people that want to say that they're in your tribe and because they carry the same color shield, but they're not in your tribe. And so the thing that kept me going was, one, if you can't find a way, we're going to make one. And I had the benefit of being able to say, you think I'm mad now? Y'all not even shooting at me. Wait till you see what mad actually looks like. This is me calm, right? So being able to leverage like my own humor and persona during that period of time was very essential. Not everybody has the benefit of being able to do that. Like for you, like you couldn't be the one that was like, what you gonna say then? Because I get to sit back and watch all the Marines go say something to her, right? Like I got to be in the meetings with like the CEOs of major companies, like Siemens, one of my favorites. This gentleman was a French Foreign Legion person, right? And so like our first two conversations were in front of all of these CVPs. Elizabeth Stevens is talking to this gentleman who's probably like done some scary stuff to people, right? And I'm like, well, march or die, really? And he's like, so have you guys eaten any babies lately? Like, what's going on over there, right? But that was enough for him and I to bond over a common tribe. And so even in that moment, I got to go, like, I'm in this meeting, people are like, why is she here? And they're like, she's literally the global expert, right? Like, why is she here? And I'm talking to this gentleman, and then the salespeople, because they're salespeople and they just want to sell. They're like, we got to get her out of here. And he's like, I'm not talking to anybody unless she comes back, right? So when you get to see that kind of like advocacy that because I think I should know this, but like he was definitely not from the US, right? Because French Foreign Legion, but like someone not even familiar with our culture, familiar with like the struggles, and definitely somebody not in IT going, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you people? That's a benefit, but not everybody has the ability or the energy or the mental headspace to be able to do that. And so I would say we always got to come back to the community, because there's always bad things. There's always people waiting to do something to you. Like, and it's blatant, some of the stuff people do, right? You're like, didn't we just have this class yesterday? I can't believe you put that in writing. Why would you do that? Right? But like, that's what it's about now. Because before, like my time was a little bit before your time. Hakeem, you're going to work with me on this. Our time was a little bit before your time. And so oftentimes we were like, oh, I'm in the room. Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm getting used to being this only one thing. But there was always hope that somebody else would be with us. I left the Marine Corps. When I started the Marine Corps, they had this huge push of having more Black females and females in aviation, right? There was still only 3 when I retired, right? 3 Black women in aviation. So if the Marine Corps wanted to do something, then they would have been able to do something. They had their 3. And so I go, well, you know what? But all I can say is this: what I got out of it. I invested where I need to invest. I withdrew when I needed to withdraw. And anybody else that needs to come behind me or wants to come behind me, regardless of race, creed, color, look, I'll help you get there. But is that the organization? Is that their goals? Same thing with Microsoft. If they're having a push, like Microsoft, I say that before COVID, I was like, guys, if we can't figure this out, we're Microsoft. Who are we expecting to figure this out, right? And that was on tech stuff, right? We didn't talk about culture and diversity. But at the end of the day, when you start talking about like who has the power to do these things, there's a lot of people that have the money and the power to do it, but it's still going to come down to us doing it for ourselves, right? And standing up, right? Juneteenth, that's what that's about. So we can be at the table, so that we can be in Congress when they go, oh wait, should we tell the Texans that the slaves are free, or you think we can let them slip? Hold on, no, wait a minute, y'all. I'm sending messages right now via text saying, hey, y'all are free. So good luck with that. That's where we are. And that's why I think you need to celebrate like your success. And like you did. But you got this. Every single one of us got this. But we don't have to do it alone.
It's definitely about finding that community for sure. That's one thing that I will say that I did. I wouldn't say incorrectly, but I just didn't know, is that I was looking for a community inside of my college. And once I graduated, I was like, wait, hold up. It's a lot of us out here. You just got to have the means to find it, or programs like Cyversity, where we can bring people together. And then we'd be like, okay, now we have a community to give you the resources that you need, the encouragement, or just have somebody that you can head nod to, because that's what you need sometimes. But Hakeem, tell us a little bit about that. I know you say you've jumped around to many places, different places, and I know coming from the world of tech and then the places that you grew up in, the sense of community probably changed a little bit, and especially since you're in a leadership position. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So it's just to I have my good days and my bad days still, right? Of otherness or imposter syndrome. But I think as I've gone through my professional career, I've developed tools and techniques to combat that in real time in any situation, and even to make it a power, right? So, and I've also, I think probably in my, like, I'm dating myself, but in my 20s, things would irritate me. But in my 30s, I was like, oh, this is just guava. I'll even play into, I will let the situation play out until it's obvious who is looking unfavorable. I'm trying to use very diplomatic words, right? So, because if you give someone enough rope, they will hang themselves, and more often they will. And the cream always rises to the top, right? And I'm very, very technically adept. Like, so it's really easy. But a lot of times it's important to understand the politics and the dynamics in the room, and how some people can weaponize situations, words, just to try and take advantage of a situation. But as soon as you begin to recognize them, then, as Elizabeth says, you'll find these tips, tools, techniques, and practices that will help you circumvent them. And at least what, it's good to know who your enemy is, and how your enemy's coming for you, and the limitations, right? And why they're coming to you, because that tells me, what, I actually have the advantage, because if you're intimidated and you're coming at me like in this way, then I've already won the situation. I just have to play the cards, because at the end of the day, it's a business. I have a task to do. I have an outcome to achieve. And if you don't have something that's materially or business related, then stop being friction. Like, you're just toil. Step aside and let's move forward. So, and I tell myself those things in my brain, and then it sort of gives me power. But the other thing is, I've learned not to react, right? So I've had some very bad reactions in my professional career, like horrible. But now I'm just like, I don't even, I eat, and I used to have talking eyes, right? So I'd be like on a call and right, and you can see it. And I realized, I was like, you have a poker face. So now I just think about guavas. Hi, guavas. Oh, that's really interesting. I understand. Okay, are you done? Okay, can I speak now? Certain ways, so that it's coming across graciously. It can't be interpreted as being sort of aggressive or antagonistic or rude or demeaning, because again, you never really know. But then always making sure to get my point across. And even if I don't get time, you can do it in the chat. Like there's many ways you can tips and techniques you can use to deal with this. However, I go back to my community and to Cyversity and to my meetups at least once a month, just to make sure I'm giving myself that positive energy of understanding how far I've come, of understanding how far we've come, of understanding all the people who gave us the opportunities, who came from cultures that are not ours, right, to get me to where I am. And when I remember that and I think about that and all the people who've mentored me and helped me get all the wherever I am, then I'm just empowered. And I'm just like, you know what, like honestly, I didn't have to work twice as hard, but I was like, hey, I'm still here. No one has two heads or two ears. I don't care if you're CEO, CFO, like we're all the same. Like we have some business to do. We have some objective. Let's just get it done, right? So when I break it down to that, we're all humans. Let's move forward. And I'm all.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I feel like that's I don't want to say it's a problem, but like when we go into a space and I don't think we do the proper job of prepping people that when you go into these spaces, you're probably going to be the only one. You're not going to see too many people who look like you. But when you see people who look like you, they may not be like you. They may be from a different background, had different resources and different tools. So with that, when we put people in these places, especially in tech, we have to put them with the skills of exactly what Hakeem said. You're going to come into these encounters and you're going to have to think about the big picture overall. You can say what you want to say, you can get it out, but you have to understand there's politics to it. And if you get it out a certain way, they're not going to respond to it the way that you want to. So I feel like that's something that needs to be more pressed when it comes to training, is the actual interpersonal skills as opposed to just the technological skills when getting into these places. Because that can take you it can take you further.
Well, Baba, I love that you said that. I think that's quite wise. But like, you got to remember too, like part of this that's a part of the unfair advantage, right? Like we say, when have you been in a room that looked like that? I love what Hakeem said about like, some things used to bother me. I'm not as forgiving. They still bother me, right? There are times where I say things and, you got to recognize the spaces. Nobody told me that it was going to be that way.
Exactly.
Right. I'm lucky that I'm able to pivot strategically as quickly as I am because of some of the things that I did prior to my tech experience. Right. I'm privileged to be as smart and as quick on my feet as I am. But my weak spot, like my area of opportunity, is ignoring other people's emotional expressions. Right. And so, and that's, I said neurodiverse because, typical people emote in different ways. And Elizabeth Stevens is this, right? And I walk into a room differently than Hakeem would walk into a room. And they automatically assume things about me that I didn't know that people are going to assume about me. Like I covered the fact that I was a Marine coming into Microsoft, not because I was ashamed of being a Marine. I'm proud of my service. I'm proud of the things that I've done. I'm decorated war veteran, right? Not just I served for a couple of weeks. I did my tours, right? And I didn't want people to know because every time I walked into the room, they'd be like, oh, she's like this and she's like that, right? Mind you, I was 6 months pregnant, like, and waddly, but like for some reason they were going to say that I was mean and yelled at them and didn't know how to be, a corporate leader. Meanwhile, you fast forward and, all the feedback is she's an amazing leader. She's amazing this. Why didn't you tell people that you were a Marine? Because as soon as I do, they're going to make an assumption. Now, once they get past that, then they're going, ooh, Black female, she must be angry about something, right? And so I'm saying this not because I'm saying, hey, these are horrible things. What I'm saying is that there's importance in knowing the culture so you can know what face to show up with, like he said. And for the record, I'm pretty much a badass. And it's hard and it makes me tired. Like one of my closest friends, her name is Anne-Marie Otanes. She is amazing. She's a project manager at Microsoft right now. She's amazing. when I met her, she was like my like combat normal human, right? So I would say they did this, and she said, "Oh no, don't get mad, give it time." And I'm like, "I want to quit," and she would go, "No, you got to give it 3 months, and here's why." And I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Here are all the corporate things," and I'm like, "Okay." Right. And so, like, again, like for me, it came back to identifying that lifeline, but also
Mhm.
you got to tell the story. Like I said, I left Microsoft and there were some bad people there, but there's really good people too. One of my,
Mhm.
like, I'll to this day call them out. One of my bosses, like, I didn't talk, you won't find anything on the internet in my voice by me for me before 2019. And this gentleman, who is not of the diaspora, was like, you have a story to tell and you should tell it. And I'm like, why I got to tell the story? My job is to make sure you can tell your story. And over our 2-year commitment to each other, he was like, you have to do this, this, and this, and speak at this, this, and this. And in that 2 years, I realized the one thing, and it wasn't just Microsoft either, because like I got inducted to the National War College. Like these are things that people are like, oh, I worked my whole life to do. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that. Right. This man was like, no, you have a story and people need to hear it. And
Mhm.
2 years, mind you, I retired from the military. Okay. 2 years of being with this person. And I'm like, okay, who wants to talk to me next? Which story y'all want me to talk about? And so that kind of thing, because it's terrified me for anybody to be able to see me or any of that.
Mhm.
And what I realized was because if they can see you, they can shoot at you. Right.
Mhm.
But that was taken away from our community. That was taken away from my kids. That's taken away from all of the people out there that are going, why do I think I can do this? Because you can. Look, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. So it's important what you just said, because there weren't people around. There's still not a lot of us around to tell us how to maneuver. And I had to reach out. Like, that's not a skill set for me. Like, I'm strategic, but,
Mhm.
Marine Corps, take the hill, and my nails would be all like messed up. My hair would be messed up. But Anne Marie was the one, and I tell her this today, like till today, she's the one that taught me how to fight the fight and get to the other side and still have my hair and nails look good. That's the kind of thing that we want to do,
Yeah, and
especially for each other.
I think you touch on mentorship, right? So, like, I
Mhm.
know I have a couple of people who I have one-on-ones with, and I tell them my dreams and aspirations, or when I'm feeling some sort of way, I'm just like, and they without telling me what to do by asking a series of questions, I course
Mhm.
correct myself after being guided through a couple of reflections. Look at yourself in the mirror. Where do you want to, like, just and it's but it really does help, because then I'm like, okay, I can go back and
Hmm.
deal with whatever it is. And again, it's like
Mhm.
more tools and techniques to deal with challenging situations and deal with politics. But yeah, I think you're such an amazing person, Elizabeth. I'm so
Oh,
impressed with
man,
your
you guys
background.
do.
I'm like, wow, like I think I need to fly helicopters or something like that.
Man,
Right.
you think flying helicopters was cool? We'll talk about the V-22 after that. Still, 2 decades ago.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah. So I want to ask you a question because you said you're not neurotypical, and I am on the autism spectrum. I got diagnosed in 2021, and I know that a big buzzword for a lot of people on the spectrum is cybersecurity. So can you tell us a little bit more about that path of how you enjoyed it, how it curated to the person you are, and then also some of the challenges that came with it?
so, so thank you for being out and about and on the spectrum. I have a 10-year-old who is also significantly on the spectrum. Um, I feel like for me, so many things, but like for me, the thing that makes our non-neurotypicalness um, important, especially in cybersecurity and in artificial intelligence and in data science, is that in order to kind of quiet my mind when people were having emotions, right, that caused me to trigger and have big emotions that I didn't know how to process, I would look into, the facts, the data, the docs, the processes, right? And what that gave me was the ability to go, these are the lines, right? It's where I was happiest because I was like, oh, this can happen. And then this can happen. And then this can happen. And what that means is like, regardless of what people have told you about whether or not you're capable or competent at a certain thing, the skill sets that, especially for cyber, that are needed to be able to think faster, smarter, and without bias come from being not neurotypical. The majority of the cybersecurity like attack vectors are pointed, especially social engineering, at the way that people normally without thought respond to things. So what does that mean? That means everyone who is not neurotypical is not an attack vector, but in fact a node that can be used to assess and validate threats. Now see that you have me nerd out there, but in simple people speak, right? When you think about the things that are hard for you, like I don't like, again, this is years of practicing emoting in the right way because etiquette, because the South, because the Marine Corps, because like I have books on etiquette, right? Like I would go, but they were supposed to do this because I did this. Why didn't they do this? Right. And someone said, like, made me a great chief of staff because they're like, oh, I got to do this thing. You got 48 hours to send that thank you note. How do you know that? It's in the book. You haven't read that book on etiquette, right? And then see that fast forwards to, oh, you must be using ChatGPT and you must be using, your server must be in the cloud. You're not privately hosted. How do you know that? Because that's what that looks like. That's why it's doing that. We see things and do things. And if other people or other processes can get out of our way, as we do that introspection that Hakeem is talking about, we identify the pathways that allow us to be exceptional in this space, right? Not just cyber especially because of the amount of noise in the space is a perfect place to put someone that's not neurotypical with the right culture, obviously, because we are at risk, right? Also, you have to cover these things, right? They just said if you're autistic, you can't fly airplanes anymore. I was like, well, good news. I'm glad I got through that real quick. You can't get a pilot's license anymore, right? I'm like, is that in my record book anymore? Let me make sure I know what I'm doing. So, like, at the end of the day, it comes back to what's typical and what's not typical. Is it typical for me to be able to identify trends in the data by looking at it visually and going, something's not right? No, it's not typical. But is it of value and am I 99% accurate? Yes. So if the people could get out of my way, and I say that on purpose for this audience, right? If people would get out of my way and let me do my thing and process my way, when I turn around and go, here's my process and here's how I got there, they always go, mind blown, mind blown. And then I go back to now the 35 minutes that I spent doing all those things, we're not gonna have to do that again, right? Because what I think people don't understand is like the reason that language models are the way that they are and that the things that have happened in the past that are negative around those models is because people are plugging in their bias. Guess who has the least amount of bias in the human neurotype? People that don't understand why y'all have bias. Those of us that are quite literal, right? And that is a strength. Plus, who else doesn't have that kind of bias? People that haven't been with tech in their back pocket since they were 2 years old. People that don't have high bandwidth. Like some of the things that you get to say and do. And like I was lucky, don't like still got scars, lots of scars. But I was lucky. Now I know how to put the makeup on to cover them. But like I was lucky because there were people around me that were going, well, why do you want to know this? And I'm like, so I can do this thing. And they're like, oh, well, let me tell you about that. Now there were also people that were like, why do you want to know this? And I'm like, so I can do this. And they're like, I'm like, but that guy said I can do it. He's like, well, I'm gonna go check, right? But I had to write that guy, right? Like that's the person. This is why, and this is how. Was it hard? Does it suck? It sucks, right? But at the end of the day, we shouldn't care about anybody else anyway. The most brilliant people that I've interacted with, because a lot of people will claim not being neurotypical right now, and a lot of them, they're typical. Like it's not imposter syndrome. It's Dunning-Kruger. Okay. Y'all can Google that later. It's Dunning-Kruger. So, and I say that because like y'all language models are about what people say and do. If you go back a month and a half, 2 months ago, and you go, hey, Gemini, is Gemini and ChatGPT, like I say is, right? Because I'm talking my bot, is Gemini and ChatGPT AI? And they're like, no, we're large language models. You do the same prompt today, and it'll say, yes, Chat and Gemini are AIs. There's specific type of AIs that are considered LLMs, and it'll go into this process. But that's how normal people's brains work. If enough people say it's a thing, then they think it's a thing. That's a bad thing in cybersecurity. That's a bad thing in InfoSec. And nobody taught us that. Like, that's what we're about doing. That's what DBS Cyber is about doing, teaching people like, no, these are bad things. You need to have control. But we forget that for ourselves, and we don't give ourselves enough grace with it either, because there are going to be times where you need to snap. There are going to be times when the feelings are too big, right? And for me, when that happens, generally, I've already thought through 4 or 5 different scenarios and 4 or 5 different consequences, because that's what the trauma of the not neurotypical, my particular diagnosis is. I've thought through all the million different scenarios, and I'm going, if I do that, does that make me a bad person? Okay, do that then. Does that one make me a bad person? No, but it will make me happy. I'm gonna do that one then, right? And so that's a part of like, stop letting people. We all have to do this. We gotta stop letting people tell us that we can't, right? We gotta stop letting people convince us that something about our character or our persona or our neurotype makes us a bad fit, because the people that have been doing it before us can't do it. They can't do it, and they haven't been able to do it. And they're still the same right now. They're probably still the same people getting funded to teach us how to do it, but they're not going to do it right. This is coming from a Marine. Don't keep knocking your head up against that same wall, right? Stop the insanity. If I'm saying it, then Space Force should have beat me to it, because right now, the best resource that we have is all of y'all. And people like y'all, the people that don't know where their place is, the people that think, oh, I'm not technical enough. No, those are exactly the people that we need, because you're not tainted. You know how to think for yourself. If you see something, you'd be like, you might not say it. You might have to go back and like talk to your friend before you say it, or maybe you post it to Insta. I don't know, no judgment. But you know it, and you're able, once you've seen it, to be able to make those moves. So cyber, AI, all of this technology, this is where I get nerded out. This about your neurotype. This is where you about to shine. This is where we have to do these things. And so even if it's as simple as being like, I just don't like being around people, guess what? We got a place for you. We got a place for you. And every single one of y'all can do this.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, thank you for that. I feel like that it just needed to be said. I feel like a lot of people are on the spectrum, and I feel like that needed to be said. Hakeem, going back to the idea of cybersecurity, I'm probably going to wrap this up. 2 more questions for each of you. I just want to go into the question of cybersecurity between back then, maybe like when you were a kid, and then now, and how has it changed? How has it impacted, and where do you think it's going?
I think it's before it was password, it was hygiene. I mean, now it's like automated, it's repetitive, it's privacy related. It's, I can do reconnaissance, and like if I really want to find out where you live, your password, your phone, IMEI number, like it's all available. I could buy it probably, right? So I think it's more weaponizable right now, right? And that's where I think and my interest and passion is, well, how do we keep up with our attackers and create automated defenses, or defenses that can cover the bases, but scale up in the event of a known attack. So I think that's where it is. At the same time, like back then, I think was part of what I learned was, as in computers, but now I think every year I make sure I take a course or something just to remain relevant, right? Because so much is changing so quickly, and there's so many platforms and so many different. It's hard to and if you're just doing, doing my 9 to 5, doing my hustle, like I need to actually block out time to be like, I'm going to upskill on this particular deep dive in it because I need to remain relevant, or because and this is the direction my career or project at work is going in. So I think that's then as compared to now. And I would say learn to be strategic in my approach to remain technically adept at the threat landscape as it's evolving, right? Just like our attackers are doing the same thing. Sometimes I don't wish, but I think being on the defense, you have to play within guardrails. I think when you're on offense, our attackers just there's no rules for them, right? So, but be able to think as if there were no rules can help you defend against, even if you do have to operate within your guidelines.
That makes a lot of sense. So I know we have a couple more minutes. So this is a question for you, Elizabeth. What is a piece of advice your own self needs to hear, but you're struggling listening to it? If that makes any sense.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, I see what you're doing. So it's the thing that I need to continue to hear is that I don't have to do it alone. And I say that a lot because a lot of people say, like, how are you doing it? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Right? Like, and I'm focused and I'm confident and I'm capable, and years of being the only one in the room. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to bring people with you, right? But for good reason. Sometimes those people shouldn't be with you. When, especially now, just like what Hakeem said, like in the past, I see it a different way. It's always been the same fight for me. And so at the point where now I don't have to listen to people go, well, why are you? Because you just go look me up. It's fine. Do what you got to do. The documentation is there. I don't even have to document anymore, right? I get to go, like I go and I'm doing this thing that I know I want to do because I want to do it. Like I'm coding something, right? And I hate to say it in Google, I'm doing this thing. Doesn't make any sense that I'm doing this, but I want to do it because it makes me feel good. And then I realize, wait a minute, I'm spending 15 minutes doing this thing that someone else could be doing and learning from it when I should be doing the thing that they need me to do that's going to get us further forward faster, right? So I always remember never to compromise. Don't compromise. You can change. You can be diplomatic, but compromise to me means you're giving up a part of what you need to be resilient. You need to be happy. You need to be growing, right? It's okay to give a little and take a little, but compromise means you're not getting back what you need. And so for me, generally I have to go, wait, I know I want to do it and I know I'd do it right if I did it, but this doesn't align to the mission.
That makes a lot of sense. Learning how to delegate tasks, I feel like that's definitely been a really big one for me, and asking for help. Hakeem, same question.
Get out of my head, right? So I think, and I'm, just to be 100% transparent, it's a baggage that I've carried with me, and it's like sometimes I doubt myself, and sometimes and I can get wrapped around in conversations in my head and build up fear and anxiety over really insignificant things. And I say I have my good days and my bad days, right? So that's just me inside my head. So talking it out with somebody. I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I'm like, I love going to the office because, if I have, 8 30-minute calls and for 3 of them, I'm feeling some sort of way. If I get to talk it out with somebody, or I find my energy buddy who just hypes me up no matter what, like just doesn't matter. Or, somebody, we go out for a little lunch or take a little walk, then I just change that. Right. I also, and this is from going to therapy and all the rest, I do recommend therapy. But therapy has given me some tools and techniques. I like to sweat. So every day I'm like, you know what, Hakeem, go sweat, because when I'm done with a good workout, I'm always happy. Like when I'm sweat, like it doesn't really matter. Even if I don't try my hardest, but if I check myself out, turn off my cell phone, don't look at the screens, and like just sweat it out. I'm always happy, and I'm really, really happy 30 minutes after I'm done.
Mhm.
I'm proud and pumped. I'm like, so and now I program that into my life, right? So I'm just like, all right, my way to keep going and functioning at the best that I think I can do is to make sure I'm around people a lot, make sure I work out a lot, make sure I talk to a therapist at least once every 2 weeks or a mentor, right? And make sure I be with my tribe like at least once a month and, have a really good heart-to-heart conversation about what it's like being Black, what's it like being gay, what's it like being the only one in the room, and have these shared experiences. And then also the last thing is giving back, right? So I truly believe, and this is Juneteenth, the smallest efforts that I've been able to do have helped people transform their lives.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth, I'm sure once you started testifying and sharing your story, you probably don't even know the women who you have inspired or given confidence to, right? Like you never, and everybody has a story. Babette, you have one too, right? So I think that's the best way you can give back, right? It's just being like, hey, like, this is my lived experience.
Yeah.
I'm not the king, I'm not a corporate, but here's my shared experience. Here's some tools to help you through it. If you want to talk, if you want to engage, come here. Here's some programs, here's some meetups, here's some paths. Like that's the only way. Like if it's Juneteenth, then I'm gonna spread the word to text, put on the internet. Like this is Hakeem here, this is Cyversity here, this is Elizabeth, DBS Cyber there. Like just engage, right? Don't get caught in your head, don't get caught in your situation, don't get caught in your funk, right? Just engage because we put up all the walls are in your soapbox right now.
I love it. Like I'm getting energized from you right now. I love everything you just said, especially about like you're hacking your own endorphins, right? You're making your lifestyle, and people don't think that they can do that, but that's empowerment, right? Not everybody can get to therapy, but remember, therapy doesn't just have to be therapy in the office or with the doctor. You find the right group of people and you do for each other, community animals.
Exactly. Well,
and dancing. Don't get me wrong. I like to dance.
Oh yeah.
And now because like when music, that's that's the thing. I love like this is how I learned. This is how I kept my eyes from talking. Glasses. But COVID was great for me because I had the mask on the whole time. Then when we came out of the mask, right, I was like, oh Lord, they can see. A whole new transition had to work through that.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate this whole conversation. We definitely made it a conversation through and through. I can go on talking to you both for hours. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for everybody who's watching.
Thank you guys, and have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there. Keep in touch. And Elizabeth, it was a pleasure.
No, and again, if you guys need a time to chill, I'm kind of the quiet one, but when we get the doors closed, I could be crazy. And it's all about us figuring out who our real selves are and letting everybody else feel comfortable with that. So if you're looking for me or you're looking for, like, find me on LinkedIn, find me wherever you need to find me. I bet you better be calling me soon because we need to get on the regular, you, me, and Hakeem. Find a place. We got places for y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.